The sky stretched wide over the African savannah, a canvas of gold and ash. Heat shimmered above the ground, like spirits dancing in silence. Every blade of grass swayed to the rhythm of the wind, carrying with it the scent of sun-baked earth, dry acacia bark, and the quiet pulse of something ancient. In the heart of this wilderness, two brothers stirred from the shade of a marula tree, Scar and Tau, sons of the dust, born into the wild, sculpted by the hands of hardship, and tethered, not only by blood, but by something deeper, a bond carved in survival. Scar, the elder by moments, bore a name earned in blood. A deep clawed groove ran from his brow to his cheek, a mark left by a buffalo's final protest or an old rival's wrath. No one could say for sure. His mane was beginning to darken, shoulders broad with the weight of purpose. His eyes held the fire of a leader, but not without shadows. Tau, lighter in build but sharper in instinct, carried no such wound, only the raw hunger of one who refused to be left behind. He was the thinker, the watcher. Where Scar lunged, Tau waited. Where Scar roared, Tau listened. But when the danger came, they moved as one, fluid, wordless, unbreakable. The brothers had known hardship since the day their eyes first opened to the blinding sun. Their birth pride had collapsed in the chaos of a takeover. Strange males from the east, their roars unfamiliar, their presence a death sentence for cubs not their own. Scar and Tau, just past the age of weaning, had slipped away in the madness. Their mother fought like a storm, a fury of claws and desperate growls, but she was outnumbered, outmatched. The last memory they carried of her was the sound of her voice, fading into the night as she turned to face death so her sons could run. They did not stop running for 2 days. They crossed dried riverbeds, crawled through thorn thickets, drank from muddy hoofprints left by elephants. Hyenas trailed them like vultures with teeth. Hunger gnawed at them with every breath. But they survived. And in those early days of exile, the bond between them was sealed, not in peace, but in pain. A covenant born of fire. Years passed. Now the brothers were no longer cubs but nomads, young males on the cusp of their prime, yet not yet kings. They had wandered for seasons, from riverbanks where hippos bellowed beneath moonlight, to open plains where wildebeest clashed horns and dust bloomed like smoke. They hunted small, game warthogs, hares, the occasional reedbuck. Scar had a taste for risk, often challenging prey too large, too fast. Tau would circle wide, reading the herd, calculating their panic. Each kill was a dance, rough and imperfect, but efficient. Still, they longed for something more. A territory. Power, a pride of their own. But the road to kingship was never paved in dreams. It was the dry season now. The rivers had curled into cracked veins across the land, and the grass had browned to straw. Prey grew thinner. The nights were longer, colder. Roars carried farther, haunting echoes across empty valleys. And one night, the brothers heard them. Deep roars, 4, maybe 5 males. A coalition, strong, established, dominant. The sound did not inspire fear, not in Scar. It awoke something else, a challenge. Tau listened with a furrowed brow. He knew what Scar was thinking. It was too soon, too reckless. They were strong, but not that strong. Not yet. But Scar's gaze was fixed on the horizon. His hunger wasn't for meat, it was for legacy. The next morning, the brothers tracked the scent of the coalition through the thickets. Piles of dung, fresh claw marks on trees, scent-marked bushes. The signs of power. They followed at a distance, always downwind. Ghosts in the golden light. They saw them from a ridge. 4 massive males, manes thick and full, bodies scarred but powerful. They lay sprawled in the open, confident, basking in the arrogance of dominion. Tao whispered without words, "Not yet." The savannah was tense beneath the moonlight, like a drum stretched too tightly. Every blade of grass stood on edge. Every leaf held its breath. The ground, usually so still under starlight, now vibrated with the oncoming storm of dominance. The 4 kings, the established coalition, approached not as marauders, but as executioners. Their manes rippled like shadows under the night sky, their steps heavy with certainty. These were lions who had not known defeat in years. Their pride was not born of arrogance, but of history written in blood. Scar and Tao stood their ground. They had never faced such odds, but they had never needed to be brave before. Only now, with something worth protecting, a future, a pride, a place in the eternal rhythm of the wild, did courage truly find its place in their bones. The roar that opened the confrontation was not one of warning. It was a declaration. The Ta, eldest of the 4 kings, a broad male with a mane like burnt mahogany, thundered his challenge into the air. It rolled across the land like a wave, sending hares scurrying and owls lifting silently from trees. Scar answered, not with the volume of experience, but with the clarity of purpose. His roar was raw, young, and unrelenting. It said, "I am not afraid." Tao stood beside him, eyes darting between the approaching shapes. His mind raced. He wasn't thinking about victory, only about time. Could they survive long enough for the pride to escape deeper into the thickets? Could they create enough chaos to break the enemy's momentum? Then came the charge. The 4 kings burst forward, 2 breaking left, 2 flanking right. Practiced, precise, like wolves in leonine form. Their intent was simple: divide and overwhelm. Scar lunged to intercept the broad-maned male, a clash of muscle and fury. The force of their collision echoed into the night. Claws raked, teeth snapped. Dust exploded beneath their paws. Tao met the second male head-on, slipping under the first blow and spinning away, forcing the aggressor into a tree trunk with a thud. He didn't fight with raw power. He fought like water, evasive, reactive, patient. But patience would not save them for long. The third and fourth males circled, closing in fast. The strategy was clear. Exhaust the brothers, force them to separate, isolate one, finish him. Scar's left flank was exposed. Tao saw it before Scar did. Without hesitation, Tao launched himself onto the third male, dragging him down in a fury of biting and kicking limbs. His growl was sharp, high, not the deep thunder of Scar's defiance, but the cutting edge of desperation. Scar, now free, delivered a punishing bite to his opponent's shoulder, forcing the larger male back. But the weight of the battle was tipping. Tao was pinned beneath 2 lions now. His body writhed, blood slicking the fur on his back. He screamed, not in pain, but in defiance. Scar heard it. He turned, saw his brother vanishing under a mass of heaving muscle and claws, and something ancient rose within him. Not rage, not fear, something older. A memory of their mother's final stand. Of the time she turned back to face the killers so her sons could run. A legacy left unfinished. Scar exploded forward with everything he had. His body slammed into one of Tao's attackers with such force that the male was lifted clear off the ground. Scar's teeth found the throat and clamped hard. He didn't let go. The other male turned, caught off guard, and in that second, Tao twisted free. He lunged low, biting the hind leg of the distracted rival, drawing blood. The enemy howled, retreating in a stagger. 2 down, 2 circling. But the toll had been paid. Tao limped now, favoring his right leg. Blood ran from a deep gash near his ribcage. Scar's shoulder was swelling, his breath labored. Yet they stood, bloodied, bruised, but standing. The older coalition regrouped. Their arrogance had cracked. These were no cubs. These were no wanderers looking for scraps. These were warriors, and worse, they were brothers. The 4 males didn't retreat, not yet. They paced, stalked, tested the edges of the battlefield, but they did not attack again. Not that night. The standoff lingered until the first fingers of dawn clawed at the eastern sky. When the light came, it fell upon 2 unbroken silhouettes. Standing side by side, silent, unmoving. The invaders growled low and turned, disappearing into the brush, not in defeat, but in recognition. The war was not over, but they would not win it tonight. Scar exhaled. Tao collapsed. The younger lion lay in the dust, chest rising like a broken bellows. Scar dropped beside him, nose to his brother's ear, nuzzling softly. The pride emerged slowly from the thickets, eyes wide, bodies trembling. One of the lionesses, the elder with the torn ear, moved toward them. Her steps were hesitant at first. But she reached Tao and began to lick his wounds, a gesture ancient and sacred, acceptance. By the time the sun was fully risen, the landscape had changed, not in shape, but in rule. The brothers had not claimed territory, not yet, but they had claimed something rarer, respect, and in the language of lions, that was the first stone in the foundation of kingship. In the days that followed, Tao's wounds scabbed into thick crusts. His limp would remain for weeks, but he moved with a stubbornness that defied pain. Scar kept watch during the nights, pacing the perimeter, marking with renewed urgency. Overhead, the sky remained a vast ocean of brittle blue, empty of mercy. Clouds gathered only to scatter again. The land beneath faded from gold to gray, then to the parched color of old bone. Waterholes shrank to bitter puddles, thick with algae and the prints of every desperate creature that dared drink there. This was the silent season, the time between the rains, when the world held its breath. And for Scar and Tao, it was a season of waiting. No new roars echoed across the plains, no scent of the old coalition. Only the slow hum of flies, the dry whisper of grass against fur, and the quiet ache of healing wounds. Tao's limp had hardened into a rhythm. He no longer flinched with every step, but he carried the memory of pain in his gait, a subtle hitch, a tiny pause. Scar watched it with silent concern, though he never spoke of it. The pride moved cautiously. The lionesses remained near the core of the territory, hunting under the cover of night and shade. Their kills were smaller now: warthogs, young impala, even the occasional porcupine. The great herds had drifted eastward, following distant storms, leaving the Pride lands quiet and still. Scar and Tao took turns patrolling. They marked trees with slow precision, their scent a warning written in musk and sweat. We are still here. But the silence was not empty. It was testing them. Every dry day that passed was a whisper in their ear. Are you strong enough to rule this land? Can you defend what you have claimed with blood? One evening, as the sun fell like a burning coin into the horizon, Scar climbed a hill alone. From the crest, he saw everything: the land, the trees, the ghosts of old battles. His breath steamed in the cooling air. He stood there long after. The stars emerged, scanning the shadows for signs of movement. None came. But behind him, Tao appeared. He said nothing, simply sat beside his brother, eyes scanning the same horizon. It was the way of lions, words unnecessary when the bond runs, deeper than silence. Below them, the lionesses gathered in the hollow of a dried riverbed. One was in estrus, her tail twitching, her steps light, her scent carried on the breeze like a song. Scar's nostrils flared. He descended at dawn. Tao remained on the ridge, watching as his brother approached the lioness. There was no violence, no dominance, only ritual, a soft rumble, a gentle nudge. The lioness accepted him with grace. They mated under the acacia shade, not as strangers, but as new partners in the ancient rhythm of life. For Scar, it was a turning point. He was no longer just a nomad, nor simply a protector. He was now a father in waiting. The days turned. The lioness grew more cautious, her hunger deeper, her steps slower. The other lionesses shadowed her, guarding her gently, instinctively. Tao followed close when she moved, a silent sentry in golden dust. And Scar changed. His patrols grew, longer, his presence more dominant. He began roaring at dusk, his voice carrying far, a signature written in thunder. No replies came, but the echoes lingered, a reminder to all that a new force had taken root here. Still, the silent season pressed on. Prey grew thinner. Hunger clawed at ribs. One morning, a giraffe was found dead, not killed by lions, but collapsed in the heat, its legs folded like broken towers. The pride fed for 2 days. Vultures circled. Hyenas paced at the edge, but did not dare challenge. The balance was holding, but danger in the silent season wears many skins. It was Tao who first smelled it. Rot, faint, metallic, not from carrion, from flesh still fighting to live. He followed the scent past the southern ridge, down into the gully where the acacias grew in twisted groves. And there in the dust he found her, one of the lionesses, the youngest, barely past her 2nd year. Her body was curled beneath a bush, ribs heaving. Her eyes were glassy, her gums pale. She did not lift her head when he approached. Snake bite, Tao stepped back, ears flat. His breath quickened. He called with a low rumble, summoning Scar. When Scar arrived, he did not speak. He nuzzled her gently, but she did not respond. The venom had already taken hold, muscles stiffened, breath shallow. The lionesses gathered, but they could do nothing. By nightfall, she was gone. The pride lay around her, quiet, their tails still. Scar sat apart, head low, shoulders heavy. Tao kept watch. It was a reminder that even in times of peace, death is never far. The body was left untouched. The pride moved on in the morning, heads low. Even the vultures stayed away that first. The morning wind blew colder than it should have. It wound through the acacia groves like a whispered warning, stirring the dust into spirals that vanished as quickly as they formed. The air carried a scent that did not belong. Not the musky perfume of resident males, not the comforting trace of the pride. This was something different. Sharp, lonely, unclaimed. It was the scent of a rogue. Scar discovered it first, clawed deep into the bark of a fever tree near the southern boundary. The marks were high, deliberate, fresh. A lion had passed through. Not sneaking, but declaring. Tao joined him at the base of the tree, his limp subtle now, more of a sway than a stagger. He sniffed the bark and turned toward the wind. There was no need to speak. They knew what it meant. They had fought numbers before. 4 kings in unity, but a lone rogue? That was something more unpredictable, more dangerous in a different way, unbound by loyalty, unhinged by solitude. A rogue male had nothing to lose, and sometimes that made him the deadliest threat of all. Scar and Tao followed the trail. It weaved through tall grass, cut across a dried stream bed, and vanished into a thicket of blackthorns. There, the scent paused, lingering on flattened grass, a resting place, still warm. He had slept here recently. Scar crouched low. Tao scanned the horizon. The pride was unaware, still gathered near the central plains. The lioness, heavy with cubs, had retreated into the denser brush to prepare for birth. The others hunted in pairs. They could not know that danger had already passed the threshold. For days, Scar and Tao patrolled. No sight of the rogue, only signs, fresh tracks, recently marked bushes, broken branches, overturned dung. A ghost, moving between shadows, never close, never visible, but always there. And then, silence. The trail vanished. No scent, no tracks. Scar doubled his patrols. He barely slept. His roars came more frequently, echoing in the night, defiant and searching. But no answer came. Tao worried, though he did not say it. A rogue who announces his presence and then disappears is not retreating. He is watching, waiting, planning. On the 3rd day, a change. The carcass of a young kudu was discovered near the western edge of the territory, freshly killed, untouched. Not a bite taken. A message. Scar circled it twice before raising his head and roaring. The challenge was clear now. The rogue was not here to sneak past. He wanted something. Territory, or the pride, or perhaps simply war. That night, the wind returned. Stronger, wetter, promising storms. Thunder growled along the horizon, distant but moving fast. The sky turned copper, then bruised purple, and then suddenly, the rains returned. Fat drops exploded against the earth. Cracks in the soil hissed shut. Dust turned to mud in minutes. Rivers that had vanished in the heat surged again, churning with new life. The Pride gathered under a rocky overhang, huddled close, eyes blinking against the downpour. Tao stood near them, flanks steaming, watching the rain. Scar was not with them. He had gone east, alone. He found the rogue beneath a twisted fig tree just as lightning split the sky. The lone male stood, silent, as Scar approached. His mane was wild, dark as storm clouds, matted at the edges. His eyes were gold, not with youth, but with something colder, experienced, hard. Older than Scar, stronger possibly. But Scar did not flinch. The two lions circled one another slowly, water dripping from their faces, their breath misting in the cool air. They said nothing, not with sound. Their bodies spoke, muscles tensed, tails flicked. Then, like thunder, they collided. Claws found flesh, teeth snapped. The storm became their drumbeat. Rain turned the battlefield to mud. Scar lunged, aiming for the shoulder. The rogue twisted, retaliating with a brutal swipe that opened Scar's cheek in a red gash. Blood mixed with rain. They broke apart. The rains had passed, but they left their fingerprints on the land. Green spread like fire across the plains. Grasses thickened. Trees unfurled fresh leaves. The air was no longer dry and brittle, but heavy with the scent of earth and new life. Where once the ground had cracked, now puddles shimmered in the sunlight. The Savannah had awakened, and in its heart, 3 tiny lives blinked at the world for the first time. The cubs emerged from the den under the cautious eyes of their mother. Their steps were clumsy, their heads too large for their bodies. Each movement was a test, a question, an exploration. The 2 males wrestled, growling softly in a high-pitched imitation of what they had not yet learned. The female was quieter, slower to play, more deliberate. Her eyes lingered on things, birds, shadows, the sway of grass. Scar watched from a distance at first. It was not the way of lion kings to linger with newborns. Yet something in his gaze softened when the cubs approached, biting his tail, climbing over his paws, fearless in their innocence. One day, the boldest male cub bit too hard. Scar turned, growling, a sound that would send antelope into a full sprint. The cub did not run, he growled back. A puff of air, a squeak. Tao, watching nearby, barked out a rare laugh, a low, breathy rumble. Scar stared at the cub for a long moment, then lay down beside him, tail flicking gently. This was legacy, not carved in stone, but in blood and breath and playful growls. The pride flourished. With the rains had come prey, wildebeest, impala, zebra. The lionesses hunted with precision and unity, their bellies full more often than not. They brought back meat to the cubs, teaching them the ways of flesh and fang. Scar patrolled less, choosing instead to rest among the pride, eyes half closed, listening to the distant sounds of the savannah. His body bore the marks of war, but his spirit was at peace, for now. Tao took to teaching the cubs. He was gentler than Scar, but no less firm. When the young ones became too rowdy, he would pin them with a paw, not to hurt, but to remind. When they ventured too far, he brought them back with a gentle growl. The limp in his gait did not deter the cubs. They climbed over him like a fallen tree, tangled in his mane, chewed his ears. He never flinched. To them, he was not broken. He was home. But the savannah never sleeps. Even in times of peace, the wild watches. One morning, vultures circled to the east, not dozens, just 3, small, quiet. But Tao noticed. He followed their spiral. It took him to the body of a young hyena, alone, mauled, its throat torn out. Strange, lions and hyenas fought often. But this wasn't Scar's work, nor the lioness's. It was too far from the pride, too isolated. The bite pattern was familiar, but not fresh. A rogue? No scent lingered. Tao stood over the carcass, eyes narrowed. He didn't like the feeling in his chest, that cold ripple that came before storms. He turned and began the long walk back, but his mind stayed behind. Something was moving in the shadows. At the den, the cubs played in the grass. Scar lay on his side, tail flicking. The lionesses groomed each other beneath the shade of a marula tree. Tao did not share what he had seen. Not yet. That night, the sky was moonless. The stars burned white and clear. A lioness returned late from a hunt, panting, ears back. She had been chased from a kill, she said. Not by hyenas, not by other lions, by something she did not see. Something that followed her silently through the grass. She had not seen eyes, only felt them. Scar stood slowly, every muscle taut. He turned to Tao. No words passed. They remembered the rogue, perhaps the same, perhaps another. The next morning, Scar resumed patrols. He marked every tree along the border, roared into every hilltop, scraped his claws along bark with slow, deliberate force. He was not just announcing his rule, he was drawing a line. Tao stayed, closer to the cubs. Every rustle in the grass turned his head. Every bird call made his ears twitch. The lionesses noticed. They began keeping the cubs nearer, discouraged wandering. The play grew quieter, warier. Peace had not broken, but it had thinned. Then, a sound, a roar, not Scar, not Tao, from the south. One lion, deep, measured. It came once, then silence. Tao stood, ears forward. Scar arrived at his side. They listened. Nothing. No more calls. A challenge, yes, but a patient one. That evening, Scar and Tao left the pride. They moved south, following the path of the roar. Hours passed. The land was still until the trees opened. And there, in the center of a clearing, stood the rogue. Not the same as before. Larger, older, and he was not alone. Behind him, another, younger, leaner, mane still pale, but eyes hard. A coalition. 2 brothers. Scar froze. Tao inhaled. They had not come to test. They had come to take. Scar stepped forward and roared. The dry season arrived like a slow suffocation. The rivers thinned to dust-streaked veins. Grass turned brittle under the relentless sun. Prey herds moved in tight, desperate formations. The sky lost its blue, taking on a pale silver sheen, like a blade held to the throat of the land. Scar and Tao watched from the high ridges, eyes narrowed against the shimmering heat. The pride, once lively and restless, now huddled under trees during the day, conserving strength. Cubs panted in the shade. Lionesses hunted under moonlight, often returning empty-jawed. One evening, Savannah, the elder lioness, did not return. She had chased a wounded kudu into the thickets but never emerged. Scar and Tao searched through the night. They found her the next morning. She had fought, her claws bloodied, her flanks torn. But a leopard had found her first. She had died with her teeth sunk into its throat. Tao licked her wounds gently, even though her breath had long since stopped. Scar stood beside her body, tail still. Savannah had been a mother to the pride. To them, her loss was a crack in their armor. That same week, a wildfire broke out in the east. Sparked by lightning, fanned by wind, it roared through the dry scrubland like a living beast. Ash filled the sky. The earth burned. Animals ran. The pride scattered. Scar herded cubs away from the advancing fire line. Tao, limping harder now from an old wound reopened in panic, kept pace, ushering lionesses through smoke. The fire did not touch them directly, but it destroyed the eastern hunting ground. Their territory was halved, and with it, their food. Starvation loomed. Desperation drives risk. Scar began pushing farther into neighboring lands, places once left untouched out of respect or fear. They hunted gazelle in rogue-controlled zones. They stalked buffalo too dangerous to tackle. One night, Tao returned limping worse than ever. He collapsed near the den site, ribs showing beneath his fur. A zebra kick had torn a deep gash across his side. Scar stood over him, his eyes wild. He roared, not to call the pride, not to claim land, but to rage against the sky. For hours, Scar did not leave his brother's side. The lionesses brought food. They cleaned Tao's wound. Scar refused to eat. He waited, his muzzle resting against Tao's mane, breath shallow. Days passed. Then one dawn, as birds returned timidly to the blackened trees, Tao lifted his head, weak but alive. The pride stirred with cautious joy. Cubs approached with hesitant steps. Scar, silent, finally stood and took a long drink from the muddy pool near the den. Trial by fire. They had survived. But the scars were deeper now. The pride had lost elders. The land had lost life. The balance had shifted. And in that slow burning shift, something darker stirred. Far beyond their borders, young males had watched the fire, had watched Scar and Tao stretch thin, had watched them bleed. A new threat gathered like storm clouds. But for this moment, this fragile moment, the brothers lay side by side once more, sharing the earth beneath a quiet sky, unbroken, still bonded, still kings. The dry season had carved its scars deep into the land. The once lush plains were now a tapestry of cracked earth and brittle grass, stretching endlessly beneath a pale, unyielding sky. The sun burned relentlessly, its gaze merciless, as if challenging every living soul to stand or fall. Scar and Tao stood on a rocky outcrop, silhouettes etched against the shimmering horizon. Their eyes, sharpened by years of survival, searched the distance. Something unseen stirred beyond the borders of their realm, a tension that rippled like a pulse through the air. The pride huddled beneath the scant shade of ancient trees, each breath heavy with exhaustion and anticipation. The cubs, once bursting, with youthful energy, now curled close to their mothers, sensing the shifting winds of danger. The lioness's silent glances spoke of unease. A war was coming, and it would not be fought with claws alone. From the shadows, young males from rival coalitions moved closer, drawn by hunger and ambition. Their eyes gleamed with the promise of conquest, their bodies taut with the hunger for power. These were the restless exiles, the outcasts who had known nothing but the cold bite of rejection. Now they sought to carve a place by tearing down the kingdom Scar and Tau had built. Scar's mane rippled in the wind as he lowered his head, muscles coiling like springs. Tau limped beside him, every step a testament to will, a defiance against the toll of battle and time. They shared a look, not just of blood brothers, but of warriors bound by a sacred oath to protect their realm. The sky darkened as storm clouds gathered, a mirror to the storm rising within the hearts of these kings. Thunder rumbled distant, like the drums of an ancient battle song. The Savannah held its breath. With a low, guttural roar, Scar descended from the ridge, leading the pride into the open. Tau followed, steady and unyielding. The lions spread out like shadows, reclaiming their territory, ready to face the tide that approached. In the twilight, eyes gleamed. Friend and foe blurred in the gathering gloom. The battle was no longer just for land or survival. It was for legacy, for honor, for the unbreakable bond that had defied death itself. As the first raindrops fell, mingling with the dust and sweat, the brothers stood side by side. In that moment, amidst the chaos of war and the fragile hope of dawn, their bond was a beacon, a flame that no storm could extinguish. The war was coming, and the brothers would face it together. The dawn broke over a land still trembling from the weight of night's gathering storm. The sky bled soft hues of rose and amber, painting the horizon with fragile hope. But beneath the gentle light, the air was thick with tension, heavy with the silent promise of violence. Scar and Tau paced the edges of their domain, muscles taut and senses sharpened. The pride moved quietly behind them, a living shadow of strength and fear. The approaching rival males had drawn near, their presence a dark ripple across the landscape. But this battle was not only fought with claws and teeth. It was a war waged deep within, in the hearts of kings, torn between duty and brotherhood, between survival and sacrifice. Tau's limp had worsened. Every step bore the mark of pain, the legacy of wounds old and new. Yet his eyes remained fierce, a fire that refused to die. Scar watched him closely, the weight of leadership heavy upon his shoulders. He knew the price Tau was paying, and yet there was no room for mercy in this unforgiving world. The first clash came swift and brutal. Lions roared, bodies collided, and the earth trembled beneath the fury of battle. Scar met the leader of the rivals head-on, their snarls echoing like thunder across the plains. Tau moved with surprising agility, weaving through chaos to protect the vulnerable lionesses and cubs. Blood stained the grass, and the scent of fear mingled with the iron tang of struggle. Yet amid the carnage, moments of unspoken tenderness surfaced: a shared glance, a protective swipe, the steady presence of a brother at your side. As the sun climbed higher, the tide of battle ebbed and flowed. The brothers fought not just for territory, but for the future of their pride, for the echoes of a bond that death had tried and failed to sever. Exhausted and wounded, they stood side by side when the dust finally settled. Their kingdom remained, but the scars ran deeper, etched into flesh and spirit alike. In the quiet that followed, Scar licked Tao's battered mane, a silent vow that no matter the cost, they would endure. Together. The battle within was not over, but the bond that had defied death would not break. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the memories of 1,000 battles fought beneath the endless sky. Each gust seemed to carry a voice, the echoes of lions long gone, kings and queens whose roars still lingered in the rustling grass. Scar and Tao moved through their territory with a quiet reverence, their steps slow, deliberate. The wounds of recent battles still ached beneath their fur, but deeper still were the scars carved by time and memory. They paused at a weathered kopje, a rocky outcrop that had stood witness to generations. Here, the air held a different weight, heavy with the past and its relentless pull.